thought, well, this person's cheap and their stuff looks okay, I should probably book them. So it is quite hard, and you do see a lot of that in the group. So I think your idea about sharing, like, this is my most recent campaign that I worked on, or this is, you know, this is what I'm working on right now, so that people get your name sort of in the back of their head, and when they do need your services, hopefully they think of you first.
Yeah, and I think now I don't do that I don't do that at all now. I don't really post on groups or that anymore. So I think that's at the beginning, it's great to get those first few clients, but I think once you've got that, it's more like word of mouth and people kind of passing your name on. So I think, but definitely in the start, I did a lot of that.
So do you find now, like, that was a good way to kind of start and get your first clients through the door? And now, how do you get most of your business? Is it mostly word of mouth and referrals? Do people find your website? Is it social media?
It's usually, it was quite a lot through Instagram, but since I've been doing the podcast, I've really been slacking on that. So I've been kind of leaving that to die a wee bit. So I do get a lot through word of mouth. That's probably the most. And then I do have some people finding my website directly. So that's always good. But I found when I kind of started to build up the website and build up my packages and get confident with like what I was charging, then I noticed that I was getting more of the right people inquiring. So now a lot of the time, because I did raise my prices, and my mum thought I was mad when I did that. She was like, "That's so much money, and like you've changed you've went from this to this." But I was undercharging so much at the beginning, which I think everyone does.
Yep.
So once I did that, I found that I was getting people who wanted to invest in their business and who saw the value of the branding and what I can do for the business. And since I've done that, I've been getting maybe less inquiries, but they've been the right inquiries, and they've been ones that are like converting into long-term clients, which is always good.
I think you're right. And I've noticed that with my business as well. Like, obviously when you're starting out, you do, or most people anyways, do charge, you know, less than they probably should, because they're learning. And I think part of that's a confidence thing. You think like, oh, I'm not experienced enough or good enough yet to charge, you know, what the going rate is. So I think a lot of people are in that boat when they start out, and some people stay quite low for their whole career. They never kind of have the guts to put their prices up. And it is sort of a scary thing when you go, all of a sudden you make a jump and you think, oh, is anyone actually going to pay me at this price? But you're right, you do get more serious clients, and especially with the branding side of things. Obviously you do the graphic design side of that, I do the photography side of that. But I do notice that I think my prices are somewhere in the middle, but since I've kind of had them at that middle price point, I am getting people who are serious about their business. They want to grow their business, they want to invest, and they value my experience. Rather than when I was at a cheaper price point. I think it was just the price they were after. It wasn't me they wanted. It was just, you know, oh, I can afford that, or that's what I budgeted for this, so I'll go for you. Whereas now I feel like I'm getting chosen because people really love my style or my approach. And that's kind of nice in a creative industry when you get to that point.
Yeah, no, it is. It's so true. And I'm the same as you. I'm always kind of in the middle. Like, I don't feel comfortable charging like the mega bucks that some people do. Mainly because I don't feel like I've got the experience, because obviously I went from uni, I had like one job that lasted more than a month, and then I just started myself, so I don't feel comfortable charging like thousands and thousands. But yeah, the price that I'm at now, I'm quite comfortable with, and I'm getting the right people, like you say, who want to work with you rather than just because it's cheap.
And I think that's the main thing. It's like you have to be at a price that you're comfortable with. So, I mean, you know what your business expenses are, and they'll be different than mine and different than the next person. So I think as long as you're charging a fair amount for your time and you're covering your expenses and you're, you know, thinking of all these things that we have to think about as self-employed. We don't get holiday pay or sick pay, or, you know, we have to put our money aside for taxes, because that obviously doesn't just come off automatically. So I think everybody figures out a price that works for them. But I don't know if you find this at all. So I like being in this sort of middle range for prices, because I want to work with small businesses. If I wanted to work with huge brands and do big ad campaigns and that kind of work, then I probably would be putting my prices up to the higher point, because that's what those big companies are looking to spend. But there's nothing wrong with working with big brands. I mean, I think if that's what you're passionate about, I think that work is really, really interesting, and I love seeing it, and I love seeing what big ad campaigns look like. But I'm really passionate about working with small businesses, and I think you're the same. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
100%, yeah. I think like there is some designers out there who do massive campaigns for like big brands, and it's easy to see that and be like, oh, they're doing like so much better than me, like they've got these big projects. But I'm like you, I would rather work with like the small businesses and like the kind of smaller scale. It's just, I don't know, that's kind of what I'm passionate about, so that's where I feel more comfortable. I think those big brands, that must just be a nightmare. Like when you've got a team of like 30 people having to approve everything that you're doing, and it must be harder.
Yeah, it would be a really different process, and I think it would feel a lot less personal. Like when I'm working with a small business, probably the same as yourself, I'm normally working with one person, or maybe it's a husband and wife team, or maybe they have a small staff base, but you're kind of working with one person on their dream. Whereas when you get to these big brands that have been around for ages, not that it wasn't someone's dream at some point, but like you're saying, you've got so many people involved, and it's a totally different dynamic. And I think for me personally, like I like to support other small businesses. Obviously we're biased because we are small businesses, but that's something that like even my mom and dad, when we were kids, we always bought our gifts from like independent gift shops, and we always went to the hole in the wall restaurants rather than the chain ones. And I think that's something that's ingrained in me a bit. So it wouldn't make sense for me to work on, big multinational corporations kind of work. I like working with the people that are right around me.
Yeah, I think you've got to do what you're comfortable with, and what you feel drawn to. So that's always going to be the best results that you get if you're confident and enjoying the work. I think that's like so important. You have to enjoy what you're doing.
Definitely. So can you tell us a little bit? Obviously I know what you do, but our listeners maybe haven't had time to check you out yet. So tell us about the branding side of your business.
So I do, the branding's like the main bit I do. So I have kind of 3 packages, because I think when people think branding, they just think logo a lot of the time. They think like, I'll get a logo and I'm like sorted. So I have a package that is that. So if you just want a logo, some people do, just to kind of get you started or stuff. So I have that. And then I go on to the bigger ones that have like the social media branding and stuff, which I love those ones. I love doing that, where you can kind of get a logo, but then also bring a whole brand alive, like on Instagram and Facebook. And so I love that side. And then I have like the big marketing materials, with all the flyers and business stationery and stuff like that. So that's like the branding side. And then I have the social media side as well. So I do a bit of social media management. I do a bit of everything, honestly. I just kind of do whatever anyone needs me. But those are my main ones, is the branding and the social media side.
Okay, and then we have to talk about your podcast, because we've already spoken about how it got me into podcasts. So bit of a backstory, my husband loves podcasts. He has for years and years before they were like a really popular thing. But he tends to listen to podcasts that are just on topics that interest him. So it'll either be like, he listens to this Sam Harris guy who's like a scientist and also an atheist, and he finds that really interesting. And so that's the kind of stuff he likes to listen to. And I was always kind of like, I don't know if that's for me. And then I was looking at ways to kind of introduce new ideas into my own business and kind of hear some stories from other people. And he was like, why don't you try looking for small business podcasts? So that was when I found yours. And then now I listen to loads of different podcasts. I love it. I often have it on in the background while I'm editing or out walking with the dog. And I find I get so much inspiration and motivation from it when I hear what other people have done.
Yeah.
So yours is fab. So tell us about it. How did you come up with the idea to start it? And how did it grow to what it is now?
Oh my God. I actually totally forgot that's how we met, isn't it? Like, you actually messaged me about the podcast. I totally forgot that like we never knew each other before that. That's so funny. It's only been like maybe 8 months. I think this was all started back in like June last year. So it's been like such a quick journey. It's been like mad. But yeah, the idea just came to me really randomly one day. Just like we were having a conversation about podcasts, and I think someone asked what I would do, and I said, well, I would talk to business owners, because I talk to them all day. Like with my branding stuff, I'm always talking to them. And my favourite bit about like the branding process is when I get to hear about the business and like how they started and why they do what they do and how they built things up. Like, I'm so nosy, so I love all that stuff. So yeah, that kind of planted an idea in my head. Like, I'd never thought about it before then, really. And it was pretty quick after that, maybe like 2 weeks or something, I bought a microphone, started an Instagram page, and got my first interviews already. You were quite, so I think were you like episode 10 or something? You were quite early on.
Something like that. I think it was somewhere within the first 10, because I'd only listened to maybe 3 or 4 episodes, I think, when I'd messaged you.
Yeah, so I had a couple. My first one was with Joe from Bring to the Party. So we kind of met through networking and stuff. So I felt comfortable. I think it's always good to have someone that you're comfortable with, like your first one, because it's so scary. So she was my first one. And then I just started kind of reaching out to people that I thought were good, that I followed on Instagram, that I liked what they were doing. And yeah, I came through to Glasgow pretty quickly and had some big interviews within like the first month, I think. So yeah, it just all went for there. It's been so quick and so mad, but I love it so much.
So tell us about your kind of concept. So I know you said if you were going to talk to anyone, it made sense to talk to small business owners, but what interested you about telling small business stories? Was it sort of the inspiration behind it? Is it something that you found really motivating? Is it like, what kind of drew you to telling stories?
Yeah, I find it really inspirational and motivating to hear like how other people got going. And I think as like small business owners, we all have the same problems and we all have the same kind of worries, and we've all been through the same stuff. But sometimes it's quite easy to think that you're the only one going through it. Because I did, when I was worried about like pricing and like marketing myself on Instagram and social media to start with and stuff. You do kind of think, oh, everyone's doing so well and I'm like struggling. But then when you hear everyone goes through the same stuff, everyone's worried about the same things. So I think I just love that, and I love kind of showing other people, because a lot of the people that listen are business owners. There's also quite a lot who are maybe wanting to be business owners, or they maybe have an idea that they've kind of got in the back of their head that they would love to launch, but they're just looking for that bit of confidence and like kind of the behind the scenes sort of stuff. So yeah, I think that's why I love telling people stories.
No, that makes so much sense. And I know that's really helped me. And, you know, whether it's on podcasts or on social media, I think people that are willing to be open and honest about how hard this is makes such a big difference. Because you're right, you almost feel a little bit nervous. Like, I remember the first time I shared, you know, a business struggle or something that I had found difficult, I felt a little bit like, oh, is that going to make me look unprofessional, or people will think I don't know what I'm doing, or like you've kind of got that fear in the back of your head. But the more stories that you hear, you're right, you realize that everybody's in the same boat and we all start in the same place. And for some people it's a shorter journey to kind of get to where they want to be, and for other people it takes a longer time, but we all have to go through that kind of that period of struggling and wondering if we're good enough, and the whole imposter syndrome and all that. So
yeah, no, it's so true. So yeah, I hope it kind of gives people a wee bit of inspiration, and also having other people telling their stories means that it like never gets boring for people listening. Because I think if I was just talking about my story all the time, it would get pretty boring. But having like every week having someone new telling a new story, I think that's kind of why I was drawn to that format, just to keep things interesting for people.
No, it's really good. And I think it's nice because you come from a branding background as well, you're able to ask the questions that people are probably quite curious about. Or like, I know for myself, because you're sort of mindful of all of those things about building up a brand and standing out and things like that, I find that you tend to ask questions that are the things that I would be the most curious about those businesses. So I think it's great.
Oh, that's good to hear. Because like before this, I've never interviewed anyone, or I've never had like any experience, and it's quite a hard thing to like keep a conversation flowing and be listening, but also be like thinking of the next thing that you want to ask and kind of steering the conversation. It's difficult. So no, that's good to hear that I'm on the right track.
I think so. Well, then did you not say as well, I'm sure when we met, when you interviewed me, I'm sure you told me that you used to be quite maybe not a shy person, but yeah, a little bit kind of, and you were quite nervous about starting this. You'd never guess it from listening, but.
Oh, majorly, like really, really bad. Like I was so bad at talking to people. I was so bad, like, on the phone and like any